Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
A Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins preview, some bold predictions, keys to the game, plenty more coming up. And I got a guest, somebody who actually writes for the Miami Dolphins. It's going to be a fun show here today on Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching and for listening, for following and subscribing. You guys are the best. I appreciate y'all very, very much. It is always a big game, no matter where the teams are in the standings. When the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins get together, it seems like there are always big stakes. That is the case again on Sunday. And to be honest with you, this time it's with the Bills' opponent. And this is a good episode to bring in someone from Phinsider, part of SB Nation. Marek Brave, man. What's going on, dude? How you doing?
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for having me on, man. We got a big game this weekend. Unfortunately, the Miami Dolphins record isn't quite where I wanted it to be at this point in the season. I feel like if Tua hadn't gotten hurt, maybe this would be a little more consequential for the AFC East standings. But nevertheless, it should be a fun one either way.
Yeah, for sure. It's always fun when these teams get together. Like I said, we're going to kind of talk about both teams a little bit. We're going to both offer keys to the game for both teams. Have some fun with some bold predictions, a final score, stuff like that. That's what we usually do on Preview Friday episodes here. I got to tell you, I'm going to save this for the end, but I was reading up on you. So, quick story here. Matt Warren from SB Nation, and Marek is part of Phinsider, which is part, of course, SB Nation as well. He's on the show every week. And I reached out to him and I said, I'd really like to have somebody who writes for the Dolphins. I think it would be nice to have someone from the other team and get their perspective on what's going on, especially a game like this. That's just so meaningful to both teams and the fan bases and stuff like that. So he tells me about you, puts me on to you. Like, okay. I start reading up on you. A big wrestling background. I am I'm a big wrestling fan. I'm going to kind of kick that to the end if we got a couple of minutes there to talk about, but color me intrigued, man. I read up a little bit on you. I was like, wow, this is really cool, man. So if you're a wrestling fan here, among being a Bills fan, you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. All right, so listen, Marek, in terms of the numbers, it's almost weird. I mean, I got to admit it. And obviously to be on the good end of a lopsided rivalry in recent years, of course, that feels good. I'm old, so I was growing up as a little kid, but still, I remember being a little baby and a little kid when the Bills went 0 for the decade in the 70s against the Miami Dolphins. So it's kind of went back and forth both ways. But in recent years, man, Josh Allen is 12-2 against Miami, including the playoffs, 34 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. They've averaged 32 points per game. The Bills, especially at home, Josh Allen's literally been unbeatable against Miami, 7-0 against Miami at home. The Bills have averaged 38 points, and the average margin of victory has been 16 points. Sean McDermott has had a lot of success, obviously, against Miami as well. 14-2 against them, 5-1 against Mike McDaniel. And Miami's averaged just about 15 points a game over the last 3 meetings. Let me ask you this. Now, obviously, Tua, and you've had other injuries too, but Tua, of course, is the big one. What has been your frustration level this season for Miami, given what the expectations were over the summer, going into the season? What's been your frustration level, both as a writer, somebody who writes and covers the team, and also as a fan of the football team?
Yeah, you're right, Patrick. There were a lot of high hopes for the Miami Dolphins heading into the 2024 season. Us fans, we took a look at the Bills in the offseason. Obviously, you guys got rid of Stephon Diggs. He went to Houston. We felt, as Dolphins fans, that was going to be a big loss for you guys. And then you had the Matt Milano injury early, ahead of the season, and we figured if there was any time that the Dolphins were going to overtake the Buffalo Bills for AFC East supremacy, it was going to be 2024. The team was trending upwards. Mike McDaniel brings this offensive system to Miami, caters it around Tua Tagovailoa. They acquire Tyreek Hill. He goes out there and flirts with 2,000 yards receiving last year, and we felt like this has to be the season where the Miami Dolphins overtake the Bills, win the division, have a home playoff game, break that near quarter century playoff win drought. I'm a 38-year-old man, Patrick. The Miami Dolphins have not won a playoff game since I was a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
Okay. That is a very, very long time ago. We thought this was the year we could get it done. Looking back, there were some fatal flaws with this team ahead of the season. They didn't do much to address the backup quarterback position. They put a lot of weight in the fact that Tua Tagovailoa stayed healthy for an entire season for the first time in his career, for the first time dating back to high school. He hadn't even had a college season where he had stayed healthy for the entire year. So last year, he played every game for the Miami Dolphins. They give him the big contract. They didn't address the backup quarterback position. They were going to roll with Skylar Thompson, a 7th-round draft pick from a few years ago. They cut Mike White, who is now a member of the Buffalo Bills, and they thought that was going to be okay. And then obviously we saw what happened in week 2 with Tua Tagovailoa going down with yet another concussion. You feel bad for the young guy. You want him to stay healthy. You want him to be able to lead a long, healthy life beyond football. So that was a concern. But on the football field, when focusing on how this team was constructed, that backup quarterback position was a fatal flaw. They didn't have anyone who could lead them to victories with Tua gone. And to me, that there's just really no place for that this year. You see many backup quarterbacks around the league having success. Andy Dalton did well for the Panthers in his first start. Jameis Winston came in and they beat the Ravens. The Browns beat the Ravens this past week. You got the entire situation in Minnesota where their rookie J.J. McCarthy goes down before the season starts, and Sam Darnold has been lighting it up. But the Dolphins can't seem to find a backup quarterback that can fill in for Tua Tagovailoa with any amount of success. And then the ones they do bring in end up getting injured. Skylar Thompson comes in, hurts his ribs. He can't play. Tyler Huntley goes in, plays decently against the New England Patriots. We managed to get a win with him. And then he hurts his shoulder against the Indianapolis Colts, and he's out. And then you got Tim Boyle in there, and with all due respect to Tim Boyle, I'm sure he's a great guy, but he's not an NFL caliber quarterback. And so you handed the keys to what we consider a Ferrari-like offense with Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert, and you got the rookie Jalen Wright kicking butt down there, Jonnu Smith at tight end. This was a Ferrari-like offense, and you handed the keys to some guys who drove it like a dilapidated jalopy. You know what I'm saying? It didn't look the same with any of those guys. The Dolphins went 1-3 into his absence, and then all of a sudden, Tua comes back, and you're hoping they can right the ship against the Arizona Cardinals, and all of a sudden, a defense that had been playing lights out ever since that Week 2 Bills game turns around and puts out one of the worst performances they've had all season long. And of course, the Dolphins lose the game 28-27 to Kyler Murray and company. And here they are sitting at 2-5, facing the juggernaut Buffalo Bills. And you listed off all those stats when you brought me on, which was very painful for me to hear, but it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's damn true, to quote Kurt Angle, to bring it back to the wrestling there. But the Buffalo Bills own the Miami Dolphins right now, and until the Dolphins can prove otherwise, it's just going to be like that in the AFC East, as much as it pains me to say.
Let me ask you a question. I don't even know if you've heard about this today. I want to preface to the audience listening or watching right now. We're recording this pretty late on Wednesday night. This is dropping on Friday. So there's an opportunity that maybe something happens on an injury front or something like that we don't know about as we're recording this. I just wanted to let people know that in case something were to go down on Thursday. But I heard something, and I don't know anything about it, but Tua was talking, I think he was talking in the media. I don't know if you even heard about this today, but something about some fans were really getting on them about a botch snap or something, and he said something about fans being on the couch eating potato chips, not knowing what's going on. That sounds very un-Tua-like to me. I would just imagine it's frustration right now. I mean, not that he's wrong when he's talking about, fans on the couch who are armchair quarterbacks getting after these guys all the time. We're guilty of it here just as much in Buffalo as well. But is there a sense of frustration going on right now with Tua?
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to know how he got a camera in my living room and knew that's exactly what I was doing when that botch snap happened against the Cardinals. But you've seen a bit of a shift within Tua since he came back from his latest concussion issue. I think he's tired of everybody chiming in and telling him what he should do. There was many members of the media that said Tua should retire after this latest concussion. You had an NFL head coach in Antonio Pierce from the Vegas Raiders there saying that he would advise Tua to retire. I mean, at the end of the day, we are not Tua Tagovailoa. We are not family members of Tua Tagovailoa, so we don't really get a say in all that. And he just got tired of hearing it. So when he came back and the Miami media was hounding him about concussion question after concussion question, and don't get me wrong, that's their job. They have the right to do that. He was just tired of hearing it. If you read between the lines, Tua didn't feel like he needed to go on IR after this latest concussion. He said he felt fine the very next day and immediately started throwing the football around with some of his wide receivers. And he didn't feel like he needed to miss 4 games. So there's probably a little frustration with the team. There's certainly frustration with the national media and the local media as well. And I think you're getting a personality shift with Tua, and he's showing you a little bit more of his true side. And we talked about my wrestling background. I kind of like it, to be honest. I like a little salty Tua. I like when Tua comes out and kind of spits it back at these guys. But yeah, if you watch the snap itself, Tua should have caught it, and he did admit he should have caught it. Maybe not the best snap from center Aaron Brewer, a little bit of a blistering fastball there, but all things considered, he should have caught that one. It shouldn't have been a safety. The Dolphins should have remained up by 10 points. It was a safety. They were down to 8 points. The Cardinals went down, scored a touchdown. They tacked on a field goal late, and that was all she wrote. But Tua not too happy with a lot of members of the media right now.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. This is something I'm keenly interested in knowing as somebody who writes and covers the Miami Dolphins. What is the vibe between media content creators and fans as well, especially fans probably, actually, when it comes to head coach Mike McDaniel? Because from the outside, as somebody, again, I cover the Bills. I obviously pay close attention to the Dolphins, and I have very strong opinions on them, as I'm sure you have very strong opinions on the Buffalo Bills as well. But Mike McDaniel, to me, right now, I look at the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, not this year's a little bit different because of the injury to the quarterback. I mean, that really sets. If Josh Allen goes down, the Bills are done. I get that, but it seems like just last year as well. Like Miami, if they get in a track meet, if they're better than you, they're going to take you to the woodshed. They're going to shellac you. They just run roughshod over you. But against better teams, good competition, especially later in the season, wasn't the story. I remember very well that finale last year in Miami. And I remember watching the HBO Hard Knocks. And Miami was up at the half, I believe. And the locker room just it didn't feel like a locker room that was on top at halftime and that was beating the Buffalo Bills in their own stadium, ready to finally win the AFC East and take the second seed in the playoffs as well. It almost felt like they were expecting something to happen. And sure enough, it did in the second half. I don't know, man. I'm not a Miami guy, so if you know a lot better than me, I kind of got mixed opinions right now on Mike McDaniel because he's an innovative offensive mind. I kind of like his quirkiness. I like the way he speaks most of the time, but at the same time, I feel like his teams that he's coaching just kind of lack toughness in critical moments. What's your take? What's the vibe right now with Mike McDaniel?
Well, I mean, you're certainly right to question Mike McDaniel's effectiveness as a head coach right now. I think the first 2 seasons, Dolphins fans were just happy to see a watchable product on the field. They were happy to see an offense that, quite frankly, was as good of an offense as any offense that Dan Marino ran back in the year. And it was nice back in the day, and it was nice to see a team that was putting up points like that. They scored 70 points against the Denver Broncos, which, quite frankly, a lot of us kind of look back at that and go, maybe that was the worst thing that could have happened for this Miami Dolphins team. They started believing their own hype a little bit there.
They went to Buffalo next week. I remember that.
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
We were riding high into that game, and then once again got spanked, like always happens. But there's the quirkiness is all well and good when the team is winning. Mike McDaniel's shtick runs a little thin within the fan base when the team is losing. He has a great, a line that he likes to say that adversity is opportunity. And we're all sitting here going, Mike, okay, we've seen enough adversity. All right, we faced enough adversity this season. When's the opportunity? When are we going to turn it around, and when are we going to be better? And so far, it hasn't happened. And you feel a little bit for him, but you also want to know, what are you doing as a head coach to right the ship? And Mike McDaniel has a reputation as a coach that players love, and he gives his players maybe a little bit more leeway than some old school head coaches do, And when he got hired, I was excited for his offensive scheme and his mentality, but I raised the question, can a guy like him lead an NFL locker room of grown men, of grown athletes? He's a smaller guy. He seems a little bit nerdy in his own way. And I wondered, when times got tough, was he going to be able to stick his boot up somebody's behind and make an example out of them? And Dolphins fans are wondering right now, where's the accountability with this team? And that falls on the head coach. When a guy makes a mistake, when a guy clearly doesn't do what he's supposed to do, can Mike McDaniel call him out in front of the team and make an example of that guy and turn that performance around and turn it into something positive moving forward? And we've yet to see him do that this season. Maybe it's coming. He's kind of running out of opportunities to do so. At 2-5, you're at risk of the playoffs being in the rearview mirror. And obviously you got the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, which is a team that's had your number in almost every meeting since he's become head coach. He has one victory against the Buffalo Bills, and that was that 400-degree game down in Miami a couple of years back. So I would say that I don't believe Mike McDaniel's on the hot seat. I don't think owner Stephen Ross is going to do anything drastic, barring the team losing every game from here on out. But I do think a little bit of patience within the fan base is wearing thin with Mike McDaniel, and he needs to do something to prove that he can be somebody that rights the ship when things are going wrong. We'll see if that happens.
When you whether you fizzle out in the regular season or you fizzle out in the divisional round of the playoffs, like the Bills have done the last 3 years, the head coach is always going to be the one that gets questioned. With Sean McDermott in Buffalo, there's a lot of good things to say about him, but one of the things that people get on him here about is he learns from his mistakes. And he'll say, we got to learn from our mistakes. The problem is, at some point, stop making so many mistakes, that cost you games, bad timeouts, bad clock management, bad game management, sometimes just bad preparation. That's been the Achilles heel for Sean McDermott. One of my favorite Buffalo Bills players of all time was Jordan Poyer. Loved Jordan Poyer, man. He was a warrior in Buffalo, a huge part of the culture here. And in his heyday, one of the best safeties in the NFL. I was kind of, as a fan, the fan in me was sick that he was going to Miami, although I knew he was not Jordan Poyer from 2018, 2019. But, even last year, he still had good moments. He got cut by the Bills. It's not like he went there willingly to Miami, but that's his home. It was kind of a well-known that he always wanted to play in Miami. His wife, of course, loves Miami. But from all accounts, from what I've seen, what I've heard, Jordan Poyer just hasn't worked out very well for the Miami Dolphins this season. I really thought that he was going to be one of those guys that Miami needed. It was going to bring a lot of discipline and toughness and leadership to that team. Maybe not so much what he does on the field, but the sidelines, the locker room, et cetera, et cetera. And for whatever reason, am I right where it just really hasn't worked out too well with Poyer being in Miami this year?
No, you hit the nail on the head with that one. It has certainly been a disappointing signing for the Miami Dolphins. Jordan Poyer, great player, for the Buffalo Bills. Fantastic player for the Buffalo Bills. I know the last couple seasons there, he was battling some injuries, and when Dolphins fans looked at his diminished play over the last couple seasons, we pointed to that. We said, okay, well, it's because he was injured, but when he comes to Miami, of course he'll stay healthy and everything will be golden. Unfortunately, that hasn't turned out to be the case. He's battled a couple nagging injuries, nothing too serious, but a couple things that may have hampered his play so far. He doesn't seem to be gelling with the other safeties in that Anthony Weaver defensive scheme. Javon Holland has been battling a bunch of injuries as well, so Poyer's been forced to play maybe out of position a little bit. But you're right, it just hasn't worked for Poyer in Miami thus far. And I'm honestly not sure it's going to. I don't have a lot of hope or faith in that turning around this season.
It's again, being a Poyer fan for as long as I have, and I'm obviously going to want the Bills to beat Miami on Sunday, but I don't want him to go out there and get embarrassed by his old team. He kind of held his own a week too. I mean, it wasn't, he gave up when James Cook got him once when he got to the edge for that long touchdown run. But outside of that, I don't want to see him come to Buffalo and come back to Orchard Park where fans love him and get embarrassed. Let me ask you one more question about Miami. Then we're going to take a break, go over some keys of the game. Does this feel to you like almost playoff mode starts now, like this week? You're 2-5. Like, if I'm a Miami fan, I'm not thinking about the AFC East right now. Even if you win this game, obviously, it's going to be a huge win, of course, but you got a ways to go in the division. But I'm just talking about the playoffs right now. I mean, you're 2-5. Miami's probably got to go 8-2 over the last 10. That gets you to 10-7. 10-7 is not a guarantee, but it probably gets you into the playoffs. But you don't really got many more games to lose. And with all the expectations and the talent that Miami has, at least on paper anyway, a lot of talent on this football team, potentially you have a bad week on Sunday, things don't go your way. You could be waking up on Monday like one foot in the grave with the 2024 season. Does this almost feel like it's playoff mode starting now for you?
Yeah, and quite frankly, it almost felt like last week was playoff mode, knowing that the Dolphins had the Bills following the Cardinals game. It felt like the Cardinals game was almost a must-win game because you felt like if you can win that game, you get to 3-4. Yes, you probably lose to Buffalo to go 3-5, but you got some winnable games coming up. And now you look at the schedule and you got the Bills this weekend, which you could pretty much pencil that in as a loss for the Dolphins if history is to be believed here. And then you got the Rams, who suddenly look like a quality team again with the return of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua there. You got games against the Browns in Cleveland later on this year, and we'll see where they're at. Nick Chubb's back, and he's looking pretty strong. You got a game against the San Francisco 49ers, and, they're struggling in terms of wins and losses, but they're a quality team and always a favorite to get to the NFC Championship game over there. So you got a few tough games left, a couple games against the Jets, and their record's not great, but they've got a solid defense, and Aaron Rodgers is a threat to turn back the clock at any moment and show us some vintage Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, this is kind of playoff mode right here. I'm not really holding my breath that they get it done, unfortunately, but if somehow, some way they can sneak a victory against the Buffalo Bills, then we'll have a lot more confidence that playoffs is within the realm of possibility. I don't think the AFC East is within question this year, like you mentioned, but without a victory this weekend, you don't have a lot more wiggle room if you're trying to get to the playoffs this season, unfortunately.
For sure. Let's take a real quick break, come back. I want to go over some keys to the game for both teams and a couple bowl predictions and a score prediction as well. Be right back. All right, I am back with Marek Brave from Phinsider. I got to give you a lot of credit. This is our first time communicating, having a conversation, and I am very impressed with your demeanor. Maybe
Thank you.
Maybe you're playing well for the cameras right now. I don't know. But what I will tell you is this. If the Bills were 2-5 right now, I would have a hard time doing this show. I would have a hard time going on someone else's show and keeping my composure because my Irish temper probably would start to get the best of me at some point, and I'd be freaking out about my team, playing so down to expectations. Although, again, injuries a big, big part. for both teams, but especially Miami. You don't replace quarterbacks, and you're still going through injuries too. Javon Holland, again, as we record this on Wednesday night, what would you say? Very questionable right now. Zach Zeiler as well, a really, really good defensive tackle. I mean, it's two really good players on the defense that are, like we'll call them highly questionable right now.
Sure, and I mean, not to mention Jalen Phillips with the ACL injury, he's on
That's
IR.
brutal. I like
Bradley
him.
Chubb, we felt like Bradley Chubb was going to be back for this game. This was the target, and we just got word from Mike McDaniel yesterday that is not an option for this week, and it's not looking like it's going to happen anytime soon with Bradley Chubb. So, I mean, a lot of pieces on that defense. A defense that looked really good on paper ahead of the season. A lot of those pieces are no longer available, and they're just trying to patch things together. I mean, they had signed a guy in Tyus Bowser, former Baltimore Ravens edge rusher Tyus Bowser. They had signed him just a couple weeks ago, and he was one of the top snap takers for the Miami Dolphins on defense this past week. So it's a difficult proposition to be that banged up and then have to travel to Orchard Park and try to steal a victory. So, you compliment my demeanor, but you're not watching me watch those games on Sunday. I'm screaming and yelling at my TV just like every other fan of losing teams out there. I struggle to keep it together sometimes.
Now the Bills on the injury front, not great, but in better shape than they've been. Terrell Bernard was limited at practice. Going by the videos, it certainly looks like he's trending towards playing. Mari Cooper, Sean McDermott originally said that he wasn't going to practice on Wednesday. He has a wrist injury that he hurt against Seattle, but he was out there, and then they changed it to limited. So looking good there. The Bills are going to be getting Von Miller back from a 4-game suspension as well on Sunday. Let's go over. I'll go first. So I want to do 3 keys to the game for the Bills, and then if you got a couple as well. I don't take, as much as the Bills have dominated Miami, I'll never take a team that's got playmakers like Miami does for granted, because on any given day, those guys can explode. Tyreek Hill, the Kansas City Chiefs anyway, still gives me nightmares a couple times what he did to the Buffalo Bills, especially in the playoffs. But my 3 keys for the Buffalo Bills this game, the first one is, to me, and it's always going to be this one first, don't let Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle kill you. Simple as that. Tyreek Hill, earlier this year, the Bills did a really great job shutting him down. 3 catches for 24 yards. Even the last 4 times he's played with Miami before that, he hasn't had more than 85 yards receiving in a game. He's played well, but he hasn't been 10 catch for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns game wrecker Tyreek Hill. One of the best things that Sean McDermott has done as a head coach is he just finds a way to coach up DBs well, and he doesn't let a lot of wide receivers kill them. So they've had success against Tyreek Hill. And Jalen Waddle, you'd have to go back like week 2 this year, he has 4 catches for 41 yards. 2022, he had a pair of 100-yard games against the Bills. I remember that. I was like, God, this kid's really, really good. But yeah, that's my first key. Just don't let these guys beat you like that. Number 2 is the front 4. You got to pressure Tua. Got to get him rattled. When they played them in week 2, Buffalo sacked him 3 times, led to him getting a little, trigger figure, getting rid of the ball early. That pick 6 that he threw to Ingram. Tua was 17 and 25, 145 yards. But like I said, a couple interceptions that game. So Von Miller coming back should be a lift for the pass rush. So that front 4 has got to pressure them because the Bills don't like the blitz a lot. And again, you're going to want extra bodies back on these talented Miami pass catchers. And then the last one just sounds so obvious, but don't overthink it. If you're Joe Brady, let Josh Allen be Josh Allen. Josh Allen has been great against a lot of teams, but none so more than the Miami Dolphins. This isn't a game, as good as they've been running the ball, this isn't a game to run James Cook and Ray Davis 33 times combined for them to. Let Josh Allen throw the football and do what he does with a lot of success that he's had against Miami. Those are my 3 keys. You anything that kind of sticks out from you with the Buffalo side? Then I want to know what your keys are if you're a Miami guy, which you are.
Yeah, surely. Your first point there of Sean McDermott kind of knowing how to defend Tyreek Hill, especially since he's been a member of the Miami Dolphins. That's a big talking point within the Dolphins fan community here is what does McDermott do that takes away Tyreek Hill so effectively? And does Mike McDaniel, does he have a counterpunch to that? Because so far we haven't seen it. And if the Dolphins are going to be successful against the Buffalo Bills, Tyreek Hill has to be a big part of the game plan. Tyreek Hill was very excited for the return of Tua Tagovailoa last week. He ended up with 69 yards receiving. That's not a Tyreek Hill stat line there. Tyreek Hill goes over 100 yards consistently all the time because he's a big play threat, but there were very few big plays available last week against, quite frankly, a poor passing defense in the Arizona Cardinals. Now you got the Buffalo Bills on tap, and their passing defense is much better than that. And with their history against Tyreek Hill, it's not looking good. Nobody likes it when people talk about their fantasy football teams, right? I have Tyreek on my team. I'm benching him this week. I'm not going to start him. I got other options. I'm going to throw people out there. I will tell you, this is how, maybe you asked about my demeanor earlier. Maybe this is how I get through it. I always make sure I get Josh Allen on my fantasy team. So when he destroys the Miami Dolphins, there's a bit of a silver lining for me, and at least it usually means I win my fantasy matchup that week. But no, those are some good points there that you brought up.
What about for Miami? Like, if you're a Miami Dolphins writer, a fan, whatever, what do you think are the biggest keys? There's two things that's a combination of what Miami could be good at and what Buffalo's not at that kind of has me most concerned going into this game. Besides, like I said, the obvious, that on any given day, Tyreek Hill, laws of gravity say sooner or later, this dude is going to have an impactful game against the Buffalo Bills. Sooner or later, it's got to happen. I hope it's not this week because I wouldn't want your fantasy team to suffer because of that. But like if you're a Miami guy, like what are you saying? Like, what's your key? Is it beyond maybe Tyreek Hill?
Well, first and foremost, they have to be able to protect Tua Tagovailoa. The Bills have been Tua killers his entire career. And I'm not just talking about getting to him and hitting him and sacking him. I'm talking about injuring this man. Week 2, obviously Tua suffers the concussion. He misses 4 games. But even going back 2 years prior, he had the game against the Bills where Matt Milano got that shove on him, late in the play, and he fell backwards and he hit his head. And everybody and their mom saw Tua stand up and kind of stumble back down to his feet and said, oh, he's concussed. This is a big deal. Somehow he passes concussion protocol, doesn't get the concussion, and then we see what happens next week against the Cincinnati Bengals. You get the very famous Tua being stretchered off the field with the fencing response. Very dangerous situation. And a lot of people, a lot of doctors will tell you that's because he suffered 2 concussions in such a short amount of time when you factor in the likely concussion he suffered against Buffalo the week prior. So if the Dolphins are going to have any shot in this game, and not just this game, but the rest of the games moving forward, they're going to need to protect Tua Tagovailoa. Like you said, Von Miller coming back this week. He's always a threat against anyone really, but specifically these Miami Dolphins. So if you're going to win the game, you got to be able to protect Tua Tagovailoa. And point number 2, you got to turn Josh Allen back into a turnover machine. You mentioned his stats against the Miami Dolphins. He was never turning the ball over against the Dolphins. He was dominating the Dolphins, and we would always look at his performances against other teams and be like, where's that? Why doesn't he throw interceptions against us? Why doesn't he fumble the ball against us? Well, I looked it up before I came on here, and Josh Allen has 14 passing touchdowns and 1 interception this year. He only has 2 fumbles lost. Josh Allen has figured out his turnover problem so far this season. If you're going to have an opportunity to beat the Buffalo Bills, if you're the Miami Dolphins, you need to get get back to the Josh Allen of last year and the year before that and the year before that, when the interception numbers were in the high teens and the fumble numbers were up there as well. We'll see if that happens. I'm not sure about that. And then, you mentioned that you'd like to see the Bills air the ball out, but I am concerned about that rushing game from the Buffalo Bills. I am concerned. Obviously, Josh Allen's always a threat with his legs. He's a big, just mobile individual. He's got speed, he's got quickness, but he can also lower that shoulder and knock you over and make you pay for wanting to tackle him. So that's a terrible combination for Dolphins defenders, and they've learned that many times throughout the years. But you got James Cook, who, just a couple weeks ago, people were wondering if Ray Davis is going to take over his position as the number 1 running back in Buffalo. But Cook had himself a very strong game this past week. against the Seahawks. Looked like a nice star player for him, couple touchdowns there. So if you can control Josh Allen's legs, which is a big if you can control James Cook and then don't let Ray Davis hurt you as well, you might have a shot in this one. We'll see what happens.
There's two things that concern me about this game from a Buffalo Bills standpoint. Number one is the Bills' rush defense has not been really good this year. They are 27th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per play. I feel like for some reason, I don't know why, but a lot of times this season, maybe including week 2 in Miami, teams are having some early success running the football in Buffalo, and then for whatever reason, they kind of get away from it. Miami did that a little bit in week 2 as well. Now, EPA and some of the fancier metrics suggest that the Bills' run defense has been better, but they're susceptible to getting beat by the run. The Bills ain't going to be playing no heavy boxes, especially against a team like Miami. Like I said, with the weapons that they have, they're going to invite the Dolphins, I believe, to run the football. Devin Achane scares me. I think he's a great player. And he was one of the few guys, I think, in week 2 that played a really good game. I think he got hurt that game, or maybe after. I don't remember anymore. But he's a good player, and he concerns me a lot. So I'm concerned about him and that running game just from Miami. If they commit to running the football, you kind of want to say, oh, this is going to be a track meet. You just talked about the Bills running the football. I'm worried about Miami running the football. You might see more running the football than you would normally see in a Bills-Miami game. That concerns me a little bit. I'm not sure getting into a track meet would be the right move for Miami right now. And then the other thing is the Bills, this whole season, they have not been good on third downs. In fact, they've been terrible on third downs, both sides of the ball. They're just 21st this season offensively on third downs, and they're 22nd defensively on third downs.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Patrick. The Dolphins, despite the loss last week, actually had the best third down percentage in the Mike McDaniel era. I think they were somewhere near 74% on third down conversions against the Arizona Cardinals, obviously thanks to Tua's return here. So you might be onto something with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Miami can control that ball, keep the chains moving on third down, and make this a little bit of a shorter game. And again, get off the field on third down. The Bills' offense over the last 6 quarters has been playing really well, but this has been an offense that has really struggled, and it's been boring and predictable, unimaginative at times throughout this season. So, yeah, sure, there's things to worry about from both sides. I don't care. You can throw the records out this game. I truly mean that too, because although I said this in week 2, Miami's a desperate team right now. They're feeling like this is a playoff game. I'm sure they are. They know they got to win this football game. They're still thinking AFC East. You and I might not be. They are. And they know if they lose, that's not something they're going to be thinking about anymore. But I will say week 2, I felt the same thing. I'm like, well, it's a short week. Miami desperately wants to get over the hump against Buffalo, prime time in their own stadium. This is the year, like you said at the beginning, this is our year. I was concerned about that, and Buffalo, for the most part, kind of dominated that game. So we'll see. Anyway, I like to do 3 bold predictions. Usually I just do these by myself, but because I have a guest on with me, I want you to come up with 3 from a Miami perspective. My first one, Dalton Kincaid. I got him for at least 60 plus yards and a touchdown. So, and I got to warn you, dude, 3 of the last 4 weeks, I've called the yardage and a touchdown for somebody successfully. So if you're a FanDuel guy, you might want to call and get that bet in right now. Dalton Kincaid, at least 60 plus yards, and he's going to score a touchdown. On the defensive side, I got Ed Oliver being responsible for a Miami turnover, whether it's forcing a fumble, whether it's recovering a fumble. I think Ed Oliver is in line to have a big game. His hamstring's healthy again, and he could be a major disruptor. He was in week 2 at Miami. And then the last one, special teams. I don't know if you give a shit about this, but Bills fans will. Tyler Bass is going to kick a field goal of more than 45 yards. And again, I know you kind of, you're rooted with into the Miami Dolphins, of course. Yeah, I'm sure you keep up with the Bills from afar, just like I do with Miami. But Tyler Bass has been a huge problem for the Bills this season. He's only 2 or 5 on field goals, more than 40 yards. Wow. They've signed a kicker to the practice squad. They're kind of stuck with this contract, so he's not really going anywhere. But there's not any confidence right now in him. He's made a couple chip shot field goals the last couple of weeks, but he needs to make a long field goal. Can't think of a better week to do that than at home against Miami. So he's going to get a field goal over 45 yards. If that's your kicker, most kickers, that's nothing. That's certainly not a bold prediction. But in Buffalo, that's a bold prediction. What do you got?
All right. We talked about Tyreek Hill a little bit. We talked about his down season so far. I don't know if a lot of your listeners know this, but he has not found the end zone since week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has not scored a touchdown since week 1. I think he breaks that drought this week against the Buffalo Bills, but I will say I don't think it's on one of those signature 70-yard bombs that Tyreek catches and takes to the house. I think this is more of a red zone touchdown, whether that's an end around or a wide receiver screen or a quick little 5-yard out. I think it's more in that variety, but I do think Tyreek Hill finds the end zone for the first time since playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1. Am I confident in that? No. That's why he's on my bench in fantasy football this week. But you said bold prediction, so I'll go there. And then forgive me if my last two are a little bit facetious here as a jaded Dolphins fan, the way this season has gone. But my next prediction is that the Miami Dolphins lose by 10 or less points to the Buffalo Bills, which somehow would be an improvement over their current track record. You threw the stats out earlier in the episode. They get their asses whooped by the Buffalo Bills. There's no two bones about it. They do not play the Bills well, which is an unfortunate place to be if you're a Dolphins fan, considering they got to play them twice a year as AFC East divisional opponents here. So the Dolphins keep it relatively close, at least in terms of recent history, and they lose by 10 points or less. And then my final bold prediction, considering his history against the Buffalo Bills, I predict Tua Tagovailoa escapes this game free from injury, and he'll play again the following week on Monday Night Football against the Rams.
Well, the last one, I certainly hope happens. I do. I like him as a person. I think he's a classy guy, and I don't think he's a bad football player. I really don't. So, yeah, I don't want to see him get hurt. I think I speak for 99.5% of Bills fans who would feel the same way. You know, you cover a team and you see the fans. Most of the Miami fans are good people, but you get a couple jerk-offs that will kind of, stain the whole fan base. Same thing with Bills Mafia, you know what I mean? By and large, Bills Mafia is fantastic, but you get a couple of them here and there to kind of give a black eye to an entire fan base. I'm sure it's like that with 30 other teams around the league. I got this game. You said 10 points or less, right?
I did.
All right. Well, I agree with you because my final score prediction is I got Buffalo winning this game 30-20.
That is my exact score prediction, Patrick. We are on the exact same wavelength here. I'm not jerking you around here. I also predict the Buffalo Bills to win this football game 30-20.
Wow, look at that. We both, so I can't talk shit to you and you can't talk shit to me if things go.
Nope.
Before we get out of here, though, I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, Marek. I found out that you have a pretty deep and rich wrestling background in history for people out there, especially Bills Mafia, who, they're seeing and hearing you for the first time, to use that Shaquille meme that you see all the time. I apologize. I wasn't aware of your game. What's your story with wrestling? I'm a lifelong wrestling fan. One of my closest friends over the last 20 something or so years is Dean Ambrose's best friend. So I've kind of, you know what I mean, been around. Well, I haven't been around. He has, obviously, but little stories here and there. But what's up with wrestling? How did it get started for you? Tell us about your history of wrestling.
Yeah, I moonlight as a writer for the Miami Dolphins, but I make my hay in the professional wrestling world. I've been an independent professional wrestler for over 21 years now, which is crazy for me to vocalize because it doesn't feel like that long. But I started when I was 17 years old. I'm 38 now, 21 years on the independent circuit. And for the last 10 years, a little over 10 years now, I run a very prominent professional wrestling school called the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy with my good friend and my business partner, Seth Rollins, who obviously used to be tag team partners with Dean Ambrose there when Ambrose was part of WWE. And just recently, we were given the designation as a top destination for aspiring wrestlers across the globe by WWE. We were honored by WWE with a designation called WWE ID. We were identified as one of the top 5 professional wrestling schools in the entire country. That's located right here in Davenport, Iowa, where I live. I know people probably think I live in Florida or Miami or anything. No, I'm a displaced Dolphins fan. I live in Davenport, Iowa. And Black and Brave Wrestling Academy. My business partner, Seth Rollins, obviously a very prestigious wrestler for the WWE, multi-time WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Big Bears fan, so he does a lot of the NFL Network spots and things like that. But
I couldn't, Marek, when the Bears lost on that Hail Mary, honest to God, 3 seconds after that ball was caught by Noah Brown, I was refreshing Twitter. I'm like, where is the I hate football tweet?
I hate football
because I know it's coming. I do. I know it's coming, man.
Yeah, he tweets out I hate football, and then we're texting about it, and he's like, I got to be honest, I'm really excited about this team. This is the best Bears team I've seen in quite a while. So he's very happy with Caleb Williams and the rest of the bunch there, and brighter days are ahead for the Chicago Bears, and he's stoked about that. But yeah, man, professional wrestling is what I do. It consumes my everyday life, and one day, I would say about 4 years ago, I was like, I need hobbies and things to do outside of wrestling. I love football. I've always loved the Miami Dolphins. I saw that a website was hiring, and I messaged the guy, and he was a wrestling fan, which worked out in my favor. He hired me right away. And then a year later, the Phinsider, which is an affiliate of SB Nation, they were looking for writers, and I got recommended for the position. And I've been doing that for about 3 years now. And it's been really nice. It's been really refreshing to be able to talk sports with fellow football fans. A lot of wrestlers don't really like sports all that much, to be honest with you. They just like wrestling and anime and all this other crap. But I love football, and it's good to be able to, win or lose, be able to get my thoughts down on an article that people can read and comment on. And it's always great to come on here with guys like yourself and shoot the shit and talk about a game we love. So thanks for having me on.
One last question. I'm going to let you go, because this is what I always, anytime I get a chance to talk to a wrestler, I'm always intrigued to know this. You said you started wrestling professionally when you were 17. What got you interested in wrestling? Like, I've heard so many different stories from so many different wrestlers. Like, was it something you were obsessed with as a kid when you were a teenager? Something you started to fiddle with? Like, what made you decide that you're not only a wrestling fan, but that you want to pursue this? You want to become a professional wrestler?
Sure. Well, I became a wrestling fan when I was 5 years old. I had a next door neighbor who was a big wrestling fan. I didn't know anything about it. And one day he was like, hey, do you want to jump on the trampoline and play wrestling? And I was sure. I don't know what that is, but let's have some fun. And he goes, okay, I'm going to be Shawn Michaels and you're going to be the Undertaker. And I had no idea who the Undertaker was. In my little 5-year-old brain, I imagined this like deep sea diver with a big like glass dome helmet over him, Undertaker under the water. I don't know what I was thinking. But we got done playing, and he was like, hey, come over to my house and I'll put on some wrestling VHS tapes and we can look at some of the old black and white wrestling magazines before they were put out in color. And he popped one in, and the Undertaker popped up on the screen, and I was like, oh, well, that guy's a lot different than I envisioned. And from that day forward, I was obsessed with pro wrestling. But when I was 16 years old, I actually met Seth. We'll call him Colby just because I know him as Colby. He's my buddy Colby. But I met him waiting in line for tickets to a SmackDown taping back when they used to tape those before they were live. And he was telling me about this backyard wrestling thing that he's got going on, and I should come down and watch and give it a shot. And I did. And I was kind of a trampoline guy and was doing all these flips and stuff around these guys. They're like, oh, you're really good. You should be a part of this. And so I joined, and we had fun together for about a year. And then it was like, hey, we should maybe get ourselves a real wrestling ring and maybe get some real wrestling training and see if we can do this on the professional level. And we did. And I mean, the rest is history. It's actually turned out pretty great for both of us, more so him than me. But, I enjoy passing my knowledge on to the next generation. I'm very blessed to be able to do what I do down at the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy.
Yeah, that is really, truly awesome, man. Guys, if you don't follow Marek on Twitter, make sure you do at mbrave13. Check out Phinsider. If you got some wrestling stuff, hit him up as well, man. Really cool stuff. I really appreciate you, man. I'm not going to lie. I don't want you to be happy at 4:00 on Sunday, but well, you know what? I'm not going to lie again. I was going to almost lie because I was like, well, I hope it's a close game. No, I don't. I don't want it to be a close game. I respect you, though, man. I respect your work. I respect what you do, man. I'm very glad that you came on. I appreciate you very much.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on, Patrick. And, next season, when it's finally the Dolphins' year, probably not, but I look forward to coming on again if you'll have me, and we can shoot the shit about this matchup once again.